welcome to the Houghton Heroes Fantasy Football League videocast. I'm your host, Dan, and welcome to the special edition, the playoff preview show. That's right, we are headed into Week 14 with the playoff seedings all matched up. The Sacco seedings are all ready to go, and the most irrelevant matchup you'll ever see is also ready to go. But first off, here at the videocast, we are brought to us by our friends at Sacco Cream. Sacco Cream, got an itch that you need to scratch? Well, irritation has met its match with Sacco Cream. We want to thank our sponsors again for their great support. But like I said, the special edition playoff preview, here we go. We want to lock down all of the upcoming matches that are coming up for Week 14 and Week 15. That is the first round of the Fantasy Football League playoffs. But first, we want to look at how we got here. Week 13 was definitely one that had a lot of people on the edges of their seats, a lot of teams vying for 2 playoff spots. So let's see how it ended up. And to start out Week 13, we had the Sacco Cream Aloe Veras playing off against Jake Kempenins, Cartwright Hernandez, and this one was pretty much a pretty uninteresting matchup, not only because each team had their fate already cut out for them. I had my playoff spot secured as the division leader in the Marvel division, and Jake pretty much was out of the playoffs, but it was a generally low-scoring affair that was a little close, but in the end wasn't that close at all. My team, led by Cam Newton's 26 points, really made the difference. Eddie Lacy had 3 on Thanksgiving Day, along with the 1 from Jordy Nelson. Green Bay is looking really peaked without Aaron Rodgers. We'll see how they continue into the fantasy playoffs, but Marshawn Lynch only got 5 points on Monday night. Really didn't do much for me, but I didn't need it. 15 from Matt Forte on Sunday. Him and Cam Newton definitely won the week for me, but my Thanksgiving Day wasn't all bad. I got 19 points from my kicker, Justin Tucker. And on the other side, Nick Foles, Fred Jackson, and CJ Spiller, all in double digits for Jake. But his Thanksgiving weekend was also not very good, with the players that he had going on Thanksgiving both got him a big goose egg. Let's hope that the turkey was better than the goose. For his team, ended with 78 points and the loss. He is in the first matchup for the Sacco award, so we'll see how that pans out in Week 14. And following Jake and I's matchup, we had the playoff position leader, the broodmare sire of Steve, facing off against Kavi's speed to cruise control. Steve had to win, and he was in. His destiny was in his own hands, and boy, did he. Everybody on his team was in double digits except for Chris Ivory and Dwayne Bowe, 7 and 5 respectively. Dwayne Bowe really hasn't done much during the year, not sure why he played him. Chris Ivory was a good play against Miami, just didn't pan out. But everyone else, like I said, in double digits. He had his destiny in his own hands, and he delivered. He came to play 20 or more points from Josh McCown, Reggie Bush, and DeMarco Murray. He had a very fruitful Thanksgiving Thursday, and his team really, the match wasn't even in contention. Kavi, who had his playoff spot already locked up as the DC division winner, really didn't show up for this one. He's backing into the playoffs, if I do say so myself. The only double-digit scorers on his team were Matthew Stafford and Jamal Charles, and Jamal Charles really turned it on in the second half. Really didn't show much in the first half, but he made a decent showing for Kavi. A 0 from Jordan Reed. I can't really give Kavi any crow for that one. Jordan Reed was expected to play but didn't. At game time was a surprise scratch from that game, but not really much from Kavi. No one on his bench could have helped him either. The only person who put up any good points was Monte Ball with 11. Other than that, Steve secures his playoff spot in the number 3 seed. He will play me in the first round of the playoffs. Kavi backing into the playoffs as it is. We'll see if his team continues the sluggish start next week in Week 14. And following up, in second position for the final playoff spot, we had Holly, the Peyton Yoaz Green, against the Pez Bryants from Simon. And Holly also had her own destiny in her hands, and she, like her counterpart Steve, came to play and delivered 154 points. I'll get to that point total and why it is significant later, but a huge game from her Denver offense. The Holly Denver Broncos, as I like to call them, definitely came through. 32 points from Peyton Manning, we are accustomed to this, but 41 huge points from Eric Decker. Wes Welker only 3, but it really didn't matter. 41 points, again, from Eric Decker. This might have helped the fact that Demaryius Thomas and Julius Thomas were both out of the game, so he only had 2 people to throw to, and he chose Eric Decker today. Also, 21 points from AP all day, Adrian Peterson. He seems like he is a matchup-proof player. No matter who he goes against, he's always scoring double digits. And 18 from what's looking like the #1 tight end in fantasy football right now, Rob Gronkowski, seems to be peaking at the right time. Hopefully, for Holly, that her team continues their revival as she was playing in the beginning of the season, but for the rest of us, let's hope it cools down. And on the other side, the worst team in the league in the Pez Bryants is looking and playing better as of late. 95 points from Simon, 13 from Tony Romo. He had 21 from Alex Smith on his bench, but you can't blame him from playing Tony Romo against the Oakland defense at home. 15 from Rashad Jennings, 12 from Dez Bryant, and 17 from the upstart Dolphins defense. New York Jets are looking to be a terrible offense right now, so we'll see if we can play roulette with the defenses that play them. But it was a strong showing from Simon, not enough to break the significant 154 points from Holly. It was meant to be. She now has been in the playoffs a record 4 straight seasons, and she secured with the win the final playoff spot for the league. Another big matchup that took place in the heated playoff race was Kyle, who keeps changing his name, so I'm not really sure what to call him anymore, against Camp Whoop-Ass of Andrew Benda. Both of these teams needed to win and get a little help from Holly or Steve to make the playoffs. Obviously, we know neither happened, but Andrew, who had the better chance, did not come to play. He only scored 62 points in a game he needed to win. The only person on his bench that could have helped him was RG3 with 20 points, but it definitely hurt with his stud quarterback Drew Brees playing in Seattle, only getting a abysmal 7 points. Jimmy Graham helped him with double digits, and the only other double digits player on his team was 12 from Donald Brown. 2 players that he got from myself are the only players that really helped him out this week. Other than that, nothing more to talk about. The fact that he fell flat on his face when he needed to win is quite significant. But on the other side of the ball, Kyle, 134 points, a playoff dark horse. He came through when he needed to. Everyone in double digits for his team besides Jason Witten from Dallas with 5 and Rashard Mendenhall with 7. Other than that, his team was spectacular. Josh Gordon, 38 points, looks to be a stud in the second half, and if he was on a playoff team, I would watch out. But Kyle is not, therefore we don't care. Tom Brady is finally looking like Tom Brady again with 20 points, but again, no one cares. Kyle's not in the playoffs. And finally, another matchup of teams that needed to win, but with a little help to get into the playoffs. Gonzo Secco squad of Carl played Drewby's Pretzel Boys of aforementioned Drew. And these teams, again, needed to win, but they also needed a lot of help from the teams in front of them. The teams won, therefore made this matchup pretty irrelevant, but Drew got the win, and he doesn't get to 500, but he does get to 6-7. He gets the win 102-91 over his friend Carl. 28 points from Russell Wilson on Monday night, 14 from AJ Green, Andre Brown, which he also got from me, 17 strong points for the New York Giants running back. Noshawn Moreno got 14 as well. Roddy White had a strong game on his bench with 14. He looks to be coming back, but Drew at 6-7. We'll play in the matchup that really doesn't matter next week. But as for Carl, he does get the loss, moving to 5-8. His team had a strong game. The only 2 players not in double digits were his defensive team and his kicker. He left some help on the bench in Ben Tate and Brian Schartline, but no one can fault him for not playing those two based off of their previous weeks. He gets the loss. Both teams fall out of the playoff contention and into the Sacco race. And that's the way that Week 13 ended up. We finally have our playoff seedings, as we've been waiting the last couple weeks to see out who would be the number one seed off of a point differential with only 30 or so more points than myself. Kavi gets the number one seed. I hold the number 2 seed. Steve finishes 1 win above Holly for the number 3 seed, and finishing up the pack is Holly at 4. That means I will host Steve, and Kavi will play against Holly. This actually turned out the way I hoped it would. I am a little fearful of playing Holly's team now that the toughest part of Denver's schedule is past them. I feel like Peyton and his wide receivers are going to put up a plethora of numbers, as well as having the number 1 tight end right now and the hottest tight end right now in fantasy in Rob Gronkowski. I think Holly is a juggernaut coming into the playoffs, as well as Kavi kind of on the downslide right now after his Week 13 showing. That's going to be an interesting matchup, and me and Steve are evenly matched up pretty much. We'll see how that goes. But also, if anyone chooses to check the Facebook page for the Houghton Heroes Fantasy Football League, then you will notice that I submitted a file, and that file is something that I've been working on the last couple weeks. I ended the season on a 2-game losing streak outside of my Week 13 win, and I attribute that greatly to the Houghton Heroes Fantasy Football League record book that is now in publication and posted on the Facebook page. There are season records, playoff records, and different records, some trophy records, trades, acquisitions of all sorts, and also the career records for all of our league members. So check it out. Something interesting I updated every week. I'll send out different things, but there is a league record book now, and we can all look at the records. And Holly's 154 points. If you look in one of the first records in the book, the single week record for points in a week was set in year 2 in last year in 2012. 155 points was the most points ever scored in 1 week by myself, and Holly almost tied that record with 154. I congratulate her, but she does own the record for most consecutive playoff appearances. So everyone check that out if they want, just something cool. We now have a league record book. And now to the big show, what we've all been waiting for, the Houghton Heroes Fantasy Football League playoffs. The matchups, the previews. Week 14 is coming up right now. And to start off Week 14 and the fantasy playoffs, we have the number 9 seed, Cartwright Hernandez of Jake Kempinen, facing off against the Pez Bryants of Simon. And let's focus on the number 10 seed, Pez Bryants, Alex Smith, playing at Washington on Sunday afternoon. I like this matchup. Washington has a terrible pass defense. I think Alex Smith shines here. But Pierre Thomas against Carolina and Rashad Jennings against the New York Jets. Both are bad matchups, and I don't think we can expect much, especially from Pierre Thomas on a Sunday night. Drew Brees is pissed after their loss in Seattle, and I think he's going to want to air it out deep in the New Orleans Superdome. Anquan Bolden against Seattle at home. Seattle's got a good pass defense, and he's not exactly the favorite wide receiver of Colin Kaepernick, especially with Michael Crabtree coming out. I think we need to hamper expectations for him. Des Bryant looks like a really good play against Chicago on Monday night. But little do we know there's a snowstorm coming from the west, and it's going to hit Chicago at about Sunday night and Monday. I think weather's going to play a huge factor. I think Tony Romo's balls are going to be swirling around, and I don't think Dez is going to be in reception a lot with those. Antonio Brown against Miami. Miami's a good pass defense. They've only allowed a few passing touchdowns this whole year, and I think Antonio Brown actually has the speed to beat them deep. I think Antonio Brown has a good game and continues his assault on the top 10 positions of wide receivers. John Carlson against Baltimore. This is a risky play because Minnesota's offense is only through AP. They don't pass much, and when they do, the quarterback gets sacked, so I think it'll be single digits for the tight end. The Chiefs D against Washington. This could be a pitfall because I think they're going to play well in the first half and blow them out, and after in the second half there might be some junk time scoring from Washington. We'll see how many turnovers they can get and sacks on RJ3 they can produce, but I think the Chiefs are going to be a strong play as they are normally. As for Jake, Nick Foles plays against Detroit on Sunday afternoon, and this is a huge play. I think Nick Foles is going to be in top 5 territory of all quarterbacks this week, and I think it's a strong play for Jake. Fred Jackson and CJ Spiller, the Buffalo offense, goes to Tampa Bay. I think this is favorable because not only is it warm in Tampa Bay, they don't have a very good run defense. Both players are on the upswing right now. CJ Spiller is finally healthy from his ankle ailments, and I think that they both score double digits again for the second week. Bobby Rainey playing against Buffalo, he slowed down a little bit last week, and I think he's going to be slow again. They don't have much of an offense in Tampa Bay, and if they can stop the run game, then all they have to do is focus on Vincent Jackson in the pass. I think that's what they do. Bobby Rainey, I think it's single digits again. James Jones against Atlanta. Anyone who is catching passes from any Green Bay quarterback not named Aaron Rodgers is in trouble, and I think James Jones is obviously no exception. Doug Baldwin against San Francisco. He's been one of the favorite targets for Russell Wilson as of late, and I think he catches another touchdown pass this week. He caught a nice one last week against New Orleans, and I think he catches one at Candlestick Park. A big game from Doug Baldwin against a rival San Francisco 49ers. Martellus Bennett against Dallas. I think it's going to be a bad weather affair, like I said, as I said, for Dez Bryant, and I think Martellus Bennett doesn't get much here either. The Bengals D against Indianapolis, this could be a tricky play. They're not super strong, but Indianapolis is on the downswing, therefore I think he makes it work. Bengals with double digits as a defense. And because of this, I think Jake takes week 14 and the early lead at the halfway point of the fantasy playoffs for the Sacco race in week 1, and I think he wins by about 14 points. The number 7 seed, Camp Whoop-Ass, faces off against the number 8 seed, Gonzo's Sacco Squad, in the second Sacco match of the fantasy playoffs. And this one looks to be a doozy. Phillip Rivers plays home against the New York Giants defense that has been playing better as of late, and I think they play well. Again, they are going out west, so it doesn't really affect them, and it's a warm climate, different than New York this time of year, and I think the Giants D steps up one more time, and they actually get the win. Alfred Morris, home against Kansas City. I think he gets junk time scoring only double digits, but I think he loses out with some touchdowns as he has throughout the year. This hampers him. I think he gets about 8 fantasy points. LaShawn McCoy home against Detroit. I think they will win this game. They will beat Detroit, and because of this, I think he has a big game in the passing department. Not necessarily running, but I think he has a big game and is a stud for this Sacco squad once more. Ben Tate and Andre Johnson traveling to Jacksonville on Thursday night. I think Ben Tate has a big game and Andre Johnson does not have a big game. He was shut out. Ben Tate was the previous matchup against Jacksonville. I think he's motivated after his 3-touchdown performance last week, and I think he's going to make do on that. I think he's going to have a big game, like I said. Larry Fitzgerald against Seattle. He's the number 1 and one of the best in the league, and Jeff Fisher on the other side of the ball is a very good schemer and a good coach. I think Seattle double covers him and shuts him down with Cortland Finnegan. I think he has a single-digit game, and his roller coaster year for Larry Fitzgerald continues. Tony Gonzalez against the Green Bay Packers. He's retiring at the end of the year, and the Falcons have pretty much given up on the season. I don't think he gets much because the Falcons suck. But on the other side, Drew Brees home against Carolina. If he can get the ball out early and efficiently, I think he has a good game. It's Sunday night. It's primetime TV, therefore I think he comes through after the debacle in Seattle, and I think he has a good game. Danny Woodhead, the opposite of Phillip Rivers, facing the Giants defense at home again. I think, like I said, the Giants come to play, and he doesn't do well at all. Donald Brown against Cincinnati. Cold weather game, and the Colts are looking to get something started. He's the starter now over Trent Richardson, and I think he scores double digits once more. Kendall Wright against Denver. Denver's going to blow him out. You know what that means? Junk time scoring, and Kendall Wright is the favorite target of Ryan Fitzpatrick on the Tennessee offense. Therefore, I think he actually catches a touchdown this game and has a good one. Pierre Garcon against Kansas City. I think they're going to get shut down by the Kansas City defense, except in the second half, but I don't think any passes go to Garcon. Harry Douglas in Green Bay. I think the weather's going to factor into this one, and I think Green Bay is going to suck with whoever their quarterback is, not named Aaron Rodgers. Therefore, Atlanta will be up, and I think they're going to run the ball quite effectively and not much in the pass. Jimmy Graham against Carolina. Big game. He's a stud. Not the best anymore, but still one of the best, and I think he has a good game at home on Sunday night. And this one is really close. I actually give the edge to Andrew Benda, and I think he wins this first matchup week by single digits. In the most irrelevant matchup that we have ever seen, we have Drewby's Pretzel Boys of Andrew Blake against Kyle, who keeps changing his name and it's really annoying, and they're not that funny. So he's facing Kyle. Again, like I said, the winner or loser of this game really doesn't go anywhere. They're not up for anything except for a possible draft pick slot on the line. So, Russell Wilson against San Francisco. He's going on the road. He had a big game last week. I think he has half the game he had last week. I think he scores about 12 points this week. San Francisco's got a good D. They're motivated at home. I think this plays a little bit of a part. No Sean Moreno against Tennessee. He's a little banged up, and they've pretty much locked up the division, so they're not going to play that hard. I think he splits time with Monte Ball more than we think, and he has a decent game here. Andre Brown against San Diego. San Diego's got a okay defense, but I think Andre Brown, who's a workhorse, has a good game here. I expect him to shine in the warm weather. Roddy White against Green Bay, the same thing against Harry Douglas. I think they run more than they pass. Get him out of your lineup, Drew. AJ Green against Indianapolis at home, which is always good for AJ Green, although he does play better on the road. Therefore, I think he doesn't have the big game that we're all expecting from him. Keenan Allen is the only person besides Ladarius Green that Phillip Rivers likes to throw to. Therefore, I think he scores double digits on yards alone. And Jordan Cameron against New England. He has been out of the limelight as of late, but I think he comes back in with a short touchdown pass, and he makes the difference in this matchup. Tom Brady against Cleveland. He's at home, and he had his best game ever in a snowstorm, and it looks like he might play in weather-affected game again, and I think he's going to do pretty well. Chris Johnson against Denver. I think he has some junk time scoring here. Kind of like the way he played in Seattle. No one was expecting much, but he came through in a big way, and I think he comes through here. Maurice Jones-Drew against Houston. He scored against them 2 weeks ago, but I think Houston is gunning for them. They're the worst team in the league right now, and they want to embarrass Jacksonville because everyone kind of thinks Jacksonville is worse than Houston. I think he doesn't score this game and doesn't get much points either. Steven Jackson against Green Bay. He's a good start here. He had 20 points last week, and I think it's going to continue against a terrible front line for Green Bay. You can run all over him, and I think Steven Jackson will. Demaryius Thomas was hurt last week against Kansas City, and now home against Tennessee. I like him to play, but I don't like him to play as well as he usually does. Single digits for Demaryius Thomas. Although it's close, I think he gets 8 or 9 points. Josh Gordon against New England. If Aqib Talib plays, Josh Gordon will go nowhere. And he is actually projected to play. Therefore, I think Josh Gordon is shut down for a week and doesn't have the big game we're all accustomed to him having lately. Jason Witten, Monday night in Chicago. Like I said, all about the Cowboys. Bad weather in Chicago. They're from the South, obviously. They play indoors, and I think this greatly affects the Dallas offense, including Jason Witten. The Seahawks defense traveling to San Francisco. I look for this one to be a small scoring affair. Therefore, I think the Seattle defense is a good play this week. With all things concerned, I think Drew actually takes the first week. He's on a hot streak right now, despite the points that Kyle has been putting up lately. I think he comes back to earth a little bit, and Drew wins the first week matchup against Kyle by about 11 points. And now, the first matchup of the Houghton Heroes Fantasy Football League playoffs takes place between the number 2 seed Saco Cream Oliveras, managed by myself, And the number 3 seed, first wild card position, the Broodmare Sire, managed by Steve Rivard. And first off, for the visitors, Carson Palmer starting at quarterback against the St. Louis defense at home. Jeff Fisher is a very good defensive coach. Carson Palmer does play very well at home, but he hasn't played a schemer as of late against like Jeff Fisher, and I think he actually throws 2 interceptions in this game, and he only gets about 12 fantasy points. Reggie Bush at Philadelphia, a very vital part of the offense in Detroit. Very versatile in the pass and the run, and because of this, his double-sided attack, he gets double digits for Detroit. DeMarco Murray playing in Chicago. The safest thing to do in bad weather is to run the ball, and I think DeMarco Murray will, and I think he will do it very well against a terrible front from Chicago's defense. Monday night points from DeMarco Murray is always a good thing for Steve. Chris Ivory against Oakland defense at home. The Jets have been terrible on offense, and I think it continues against Oakland. They're in a cold weather game in New Jersey, but I don't think this matters. Geno Smith is a terrible quarterback. The Jets are not offensive-minded, and I think this hurts Chris Ivory a lot, along with his ailment in his ankle. Calvin Johnson against Philadelphia, the best wide receiver in the game, hands down, points from Mega. Dwayne Bowe against Washington. Yes, Kansas City will throw, I feel like, but I don't think they will throw to Dwayne Bowe. He hasn't played as of late. He had 2 touchdowns in a row, 3 and 2 weeks ago. Last week, not a lot, and I think this week he doesn't get much either. Vernon Davis against Seattle. He is emerging as one of the favorite targets of Colin Kaepernick, but with the return of Michael Crabtree, will it take away targets from him? I don't think it does, to be honest, and I think Vernon Davis has a good game. The Panthers defense playing in New Orleans, I think that is very, very risky. The Saints are pissed off, and they're playing at home. The Superdome and a mad Drew Brees and Sean Payton is not a good recipe for a win. And now for the Sacco Cream Alaveras. Cam Newton starting for Dan at quarterback facing New Orleans. I think this is a good play only because Cam Newton can run. When you bring pressure on him, he makes plays with his feet, and I think this is what he does. I think he has a good game, about 17 fantasy points. Matt Forte home against Dallas. Again, what do you do in a bad weather game? You run the ball. Matt Forte, he's a workhorse. He's over his injuries. I think he gets double digits and finally gets into the end zone like he hasn't in the past 4 weeks. Marshawn Lynch against San Francisco. This is a rivalry game, so your players step up when they need to. Marshawn Lynch, beast mode. I think it comes out. I think he gets into the end zone and over 100 all-purpose yards. Big game from Marshawn Lynch. Eddie Lacy playing Atlanta. Yes, the Green Bay offense is pitiful without Aaron Rodgers, and everybody stacks the box against Eddie Lacy because he's the only offense they have. Despite this, Atlanta's defense is terrible. They have a terrible front 7, and because of this, I think Eddie Lacy gashes them regardless of how many they put in the box, and I think he has a good game in my flex spot. Deshaun Jackson against the 31st ranked Detroit defense for the pass. I think he has a big game because Nick Foles will air it out, and Deshaun Jackson gets back in the touchdown column. Double digits for him. Michael Floyd, the opposite of Carson Palmer here. Any touchdown Carson Palmer throws will probably go to Michael Floyd. I think they're going to double cover Larry Fitz again, leaving Michael Floyd open. Touchdowns for Floyd and more points for Floyd than Carson Palmer. Greg Olsen, counterpart of Cam Newton. Any touchdowns are double scores for me. I think he gets one this week after not getting last one against New Orleans. Short touchdown pass is what I'm seeing is happening, and he helps me get the first victory of 2 in the first round of the playoffs. I think I beat Steve by about 8 points. It's a close matchup, but I get the win to start off the playoffs. And finally, the number 1 seed, Speed 2 Cruise Control of Kavi Pandy facing off against the number 4 final playoff spot, Peyton Yoass Greens from Holly Carroll. First off for Holly, in the name, Peyton Manning in the Denver offense plays home against Tennessee. I think this one's a blowout. I think Peyton Manning gets about 20 points here. He's on a hot streak. They've finally wrapped up about the division. They finally have the lead back. They're the number 1 seed in the AFC, and I think they want to keep it. Big game. from Peyton Manning. Le'Veon Bell, who's a little hurt against Miami. Miami's been susceptible to the run as of late. He has a concussion. He's saying he doesn't remember a lot. I don't see him playing this week. Holly, watch his status if he does. But if he does, I don't expect much. Concussions are nothing to mess around with. Le'Veon Bell's got one. Hamper expectations for him. AP all day. Nothing to say here. Playing against Baltimore. He's the only offense his team has. Expect a lot as usual. AP all day, putting up points. Eric Decker, he had a huge game last week from Peyton Manning. So what does that mean? Don't expect it again. Peyton likes to spread the ball out, and as soon as he focuses on one receiver and you think you know who to cover, whoop, he fixes it again and changes it up. I don't think Eric Decker has a good game, but on the other side, I think Wes Welker finally gets some love. He hasn't gotten love as of late, and I think expect him to have 2 touchdowns this week. Huge game from Wes Welker. And Torrey Smith against Minnesota. Yes, you can throw in Minnesota, and yes, Torrey Smith had a good game last week, but I don't see it happening. I think Ray Rice gets his feet under him a little bit and has a good game against the Minnesota defense. Rob Gronk against Cleveland, the best tight end right now in fantasy. I think he continues and gets another touchdown from Tom Brady. And the Patriots D against Cleveland. Cleveland doesn't have the best offense, but at times they can play well. Aqib Talib is looking to play against Josh Gordon, and this is what's going to make the matchup for the Patriots. I think they play well, and Holly's team scores over 100 points. On the other side, for speed to cruise control of Kavi, Matthew Stafford plays against a susceptible Philadelphia defense and secondary, and I think he exploits it. With Megatron's going to be open a bunch, I expect them to hook up. Big points from Matthew Stafford. Jamal Charles against the Washington defense. They're more susceptible to the pass than the run, but Jamal Charles can also catch passes out of the backfield, and I think he does for a big game. Frank Gore against Seattle. I think they focus on the running attack in Seattle than they do against 49ers passing offense, so I think Frank Gore does not get in the end zone, and I think he gets shut down relatively throughout the game. Zach Stacy against Arizona. Arizona has a great run defense, and that's all you need to know. Single digits for Zach Stacy. Brandon Marshall in bad weather against Dallas at home Monday night. Jay Cutler is not cleared to play, and since Josh McCown is looking like he's going to play, his favorite target has been, as of late, Alshon Jeffrey. I think this is a big play for Alshon Jeffrey and not for Brandon Marshall. I think maybe he gets 70 yards passing, but I don't think he gets in the end zone. Josh McCown favors Jeffrey over Marshall, and I think it shows again this week. Victor Cruz against San Diego. He hasn't done much. He hasn't gotten to the end zone, and I don't think he does again. I think he's a terrible play this week. I don't think he's going to produce like he hasn't as of late, and I think this hampers Kavi. Jared Cook, a strong play against the Arizona defense. Yes, Arizona stops the run, but they cannot stop the tight end to save their life. I think we should expect a touchdown for Jared Cook, who's the number 2 target getter on the Rams offense, and I think, like I said, gets a touchdown and a strong play. The Jets defense against Oakland, yes, they're good against the pass, but the Matt McGloin, quarterback for Oakland, has been playing well as of late, and I think he lights up the Jets pass defense because you can get deep on them, and I think they do. I think the Jets defense scores about 3 points. And in the first upset of the week, and the biggest one, I think Kavi loses to Holly by 19 points in the first week of the Fantasy Football League playoffs, and making waves is the Peyton Yo Ass Greens. And this wraps up our special edition playoff preview videocast for the Houghton Heroes Fantasy Football League. I'm your host, Dan Livernoy, and of course, we're brought to you by our friends at Sacco Cream. Sacco Cream, got an itch you need to scratch? Well, irritation has met its match with Sacco Cream. I want to thank you all for tuning in this week. Everyone get excited. Week 14 starts off on Thursday night with the Jacksonville Jaguars hosting the Houston Texans. Everyone be watching if your matchup is on the line, including players of those teams. Good luck in the playoffs. We'll talk to you later.